2024 is going to be a very interesting year for the Huskies.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Lars, we got a really fun show today. We are going to be going through Washington's 2024 schedule, and we're going to give some of our official picks that, hey, last year's was pretty good. We both had them losing one game in the regular season. We don't need to go down that road too much, but we're going to get into the 2024 schedule, and this is going to be a lot of fun.
I was going to say, I just love the fact that Roman's going to be on the record about some predictions, because we know that Roman loves his predictions.
This is the one and only time. Actually, no. We're going to do some more predictions. I respect that. I was going to say it's the only time, but it's not. We're going to do some bold predictions on the Friday show as well. So I know the everydayers are going to want to tune in for that, because those are a Locked On Huskies tradition. And Lars, with that being said, let's get into the non-conference here. We'll do that, and then we'll get into the other two games in September, where, obviously the season starts on August 31st, but we're lumping it all together here. Weber State, Eastern Mich, Washington State. Official prediction time. Go.
3-0.
Okay.
I think the latter game will be the best test, obviously, because I'm curious how much it won't be near last season, but I do think it'll be somewhat of a test. And I think it'll be a good litmus test for what Washington should expect from those first two games in the Big Ten in September.
Sure. So I certainly see where you're going there. I also have them at 3-0 for that little stretch before Big Ten play. But I still have some questions. And it's all things that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. It's what's the offensive line going to look like? It's how is this scheme going to play? How are the players going to fit into the scheme? And how much of, some of the deeper rotation are we going to see? And I mean that not necessarily in a sense of, what we've seen where it's like, we've seen, guys we talked about, Kamori House, Audric Harris, Damon Williams, Adam Muhammad, where we think that those are guys that are going to be legitimately part of the rotation. Those are things that I'm really going to be looking at over these first 3-4 games, really. Even, I don't want to throw Northwestern in this bucket because they're a conference opponent, but, as one of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten, let's say, I'm really curious as to what that's going to look like, because the more I just kind of look at the opening of the schedule, I say, yeah, they should be able to handle business. They should be able to start 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, which is my official prediction as we move into the first couple, parts of the Big Ten schedule here. But that's what I really want to watch, because as we talked about on yesterday's show with the depth chart, there's a lot to be excited about on this depth chart. The offensive line is the position where we still have the most questions, but outside of that, when we look at, corner, safety, linebacker, when we look at receiver, at running back, there are a lot of really, really talented groups on this team. And the question is, what are they going to look like? Who's going to play? That's really what I want to see.
Exactly. And there's going to be rotation. I don't expect there's going to be drastic rotation. They're not going to play the entire roster or any probably where, but they're going to play a significant amount of guys for the reason you mentioned, because you want to see which guys can perform best when it actually, no offense, matters in conference play.
Sure.
Let's be honest. That's why and when you go into the Big Ten, you're going to have these, what ESPN used to call cupcakes, because the Big Ten schedule is so much tougher. You don't want to set yourself up for, hey, let's go face, two top 25 teams right away, and we're 1-2, even though we're actually an 8-4 team. No spoiler. Right. No spoiler. I'm just throwing that out there as a generic thing, because this run, and with the 5-0, I do agree with you. I think the question mark there is going to be Rutgers, and the reason I say that it's all three of those first 4 games because you mentioned it. That's why I kind of said Wazoo's the lead into the Northwestern game, and not necessarily the Rutgers game, but just the lead into it. Hey, it's a power. Work with me here, people. It's a power 4 opponent who is on the schedule for one more year at least. And, you're talking about a team that is probably going to have some motivation. Similarly, I would imagine Northwestern, you're going to find these teams. How do Big Ten teams who are viewed as underdogs get up? Because we saw in the Pac-12, Washington could struggle against Cal, could be close against Oregon State on multiple occasions over the years, even against Kalen DeBoer. So there's going to be tests in the Big Ten, even though I agree with you that Northwestern would be a bottom feeder. I would not be surprised if somehow that's kind of a challenge game.
Sure.
Just because, especially in this first Big Ten season, because anytime you're facing new opponents, Washington has been looking at Northwestern, Jedd Fisch has been looking at Northwestern. So some of these teams are going to have way more familiarity. And so it's just a matter of, there's kind of a few contexts that have to be put into place first.
I certainly agree with you there, but before we move on here, because I've got a couple of things that I know I want to say about Northwestern, about Rutgers. What is your official prediction by the end of September? What will Washington's record be?
I do have them at 5-0. I'm not as confident about Rutgers, but I somehow, I don't view Rutgers as insurmountable. I just think that's going to, without question, be the toughest test of the month of September/August. Ridiculous that they're playing on August 31st. I love the calendar. But the fact that, the Rutgers game, because you're traveling on a Friday night out to New Jersey, and
sure,
Rutgers is good. Like, Greg Schiano is going to always build a tough out. So,
yeah.
And that's why I mentioned the Pac-12 kind of element in this, where some teams that it's like, oh, it's Rutgers. Oh, it's so-and-so. Oh, it's so-and-so. I know, I get that. But also, to be fair, they're looking at Washington. Wow, these guys are all brand new. They haven't played together. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to look like? The point. It's a big question mark. So there's no convincing guarantee win, but I do agree with you that it'll be 5-0 at the end of September.
So one thing that we have to mention when it comes to Rutgers is they lost arguably their best player on defense, linebacker Muhammad Torre, for the season with a torn ACL. That certainly factored into my decision here, where I honestly, even before that, I thought Washington was going to win this game, but that was kind of my holdup, was what is Rutgers' defense going to look like? Where, sneaky enough, if you go back and you look at the 2023 numbers, they had a top 25 defense nationally in terms of yards per game allowed. So it's a really, really solid defense. And as you said, Greg Schiano certainly builds a tough out. Kyle Monangai is, sneakily top 3 running back in this conference. That dude can play. I love watching that guy run. So there's a lot of talent on that roster when you look at it. And yes, absolutely, going to New Jersey on a Friday is not going to make it any easier. But at the same time, when I look at this Washington team, also with it being their first road test, I think that there's a lot to like. I think by that point in time, the rotation is going to be figured out. We're going to see what this passing attack looks like. And this is one thing that I've just kind of held true about, with the Big Ten as a whole, is the rest of the Big Ten is going to need to adjust to some of these West Coast schools that love to throw the ball all over the place. And I think that might be a little tougher for, some schools in this conference than, it might be being talked about in a general sense.
Absolutely. And if you think about it with Washington, you have Will Rogers, but you also have Jonah Coleman. So I think that's what makes Washington a tough out. They're not just a passing team. Because I agree, yes, like Jedd Fisch's offense specifically gave a lot of teams challenge at Arizona, and they beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. So Jedd Fisch knows how to scheme offenses open, scheme people to kind of get exposed on defense. And so it's just going to be, how quickly can Jedd Fisch master those chess matches? And it's going to kind of validate our opinion of Jedd Fisch and this offense, because that's what you hired Jedd to do. That's why you go out and get an established head coach. Say, look, we're already coming off the national championship. We understand we're not a national championship contender this season, but we need to get back up there soon. This guy can do it right away. And he's built a roster, both on offense and defense, with seniors and underclassmen, that you can build it right now for a solid 2024 season, and you're still set up for the long term. So when I think about all this in context, like Jedd Fisch, like he's kind of not the X factor, but it's like, I think as the season goes along and Washington's offense kind of shows, and with Washington's defense as well, I think they're going to garner that respect, that because nobody knows what they look like now aside from us and the rest of us that cover the team. This team is going to surprise the people. So when we say 5-0, I know it sounds crazy. I get it, because this team hasn't played together at all. But there's a fight about this team, and like a togetherness that is going to surprise the people, because that's why Will Rogers is a fifth-year senior, Jeremiah Hunter, all these guys, and even the young guys like Landon Hatcher just playing that role of coming up next. You have this kind of core group. It's like, hey, we need to win this year. This is not a retooling or rebuilding year. Yeah, rebuild. We got to win this year. So that's why we're 5-0 at the end of September.
I like where you're going with that, Lars, and things get a lot tougher once the schedule turns to October. which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at Ibotta. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta, so you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKDOWNCollege. When you register, just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Lars, things get pretty dicey to start October, where you got the national championship rematch against Michigan, and then you got to go to Iowa before the bye week.
Yeah, that to me is going to be what 2022 was, and for a little bit different reasons, but that's going to be the bump in the road. That's going to be, I think they won't. I don't think they're going to get blown out by Michigan, because Michigan doesn't necessarily have the same team return. Although Mason Graham, my word, like that's going to be a problem. So,
yeah,
no doubt that's scary. They're now 5-1 in the first week of October. I'm sorry, but if they happen to pull that one out, great. That just makes Jedd Fisch's job. Like, salute to you. The trip to Iowa City is the intriguing one for me, because I've already booked my flight. I will be there. I have so many questions, because Iowa, and similar in a vein to Rutgers, where they're always going to be a tough out. How is Washington's, especially like offense, going to challenge that defense? Because Jedd's going to find some way, but that Iowa defense always it's not the same every year, right? But Iowa's just like, it's a tough out. It's another one of those examples. And I know you think Iowa's like, Washington should beat Iowa. It's like, yeah, they should, but I would not be surprised if they kind of have a bump in the road, go 0-2 in the first 2 weeks of October.
So is that where you're going with? You're saying they'll be 5-2 after the Iowa game?
Yeah.
I disagree. And it's a prediction I've held true to, where I do agree they'll lose to Michigan. Yeah, Mason Graham is a very scary individual, and yeah, that like people can say whatever they want to about the national championship game. I know we had our takes on here at the time, but going back and watching that film, you just see like one drive from Mason Graham, and you say, oh yeah, no, that dude is special. Like that dude is first overall pick worthy at defensive tackle. That's how special Mason Graham is, and yeah, that's gonna be really tough, of course. If Jedd Fisch is able to pull that game out, that's awesome. That's exactly what you want to see, and that's what that game and a win in that scenario is exactly why Jedd Fisch was brought to Washington, to win those types of games. And if he can do it in year one, that is a huge notch on his belt, whatever you want to call it, in terms of the future and what you're looking for. Right now, with Mason Graham, with what that Michigan defense can look like, I have a lot of trouble picking Washington in that game, so I agree, and I think they lose there. But I think they win in Iowa. I do. And I will certainly be watching that matchup more when, as you said, with Washington's offense versus Iowa's defense. But I think the reason they win the game is because of Iowa's offense versus Washington's defense. Bringing in Cade McNamara doesn't necessarily do much for me in terms of, what the offensive scheme is there. It hasn't been good. And until we see them putting up 40 points a game, or even, let's be real, even 25 points a game at this point in time, until we see that, I feel that it's fair to question Iowa's offense. And when I look at Steve Belichick's defense, I look at somebody who's going to be able to expose any, and there are probably going to be many, weaknesses in that scheme, and is just going to exploit them over and over and over again. So I really do believe that they pull off the upset in Iowa.
So I'm with you, because I think it's a very winnable game. The thing is that the reason why I didn't acknowledge the offense, which was for exactly why you mentioned. To me, the Iowa's offense is not a threat. Washington's defense win that matchup. The question will be, is Jedd Fisch's offense going to out-scheme Iowa's defense? And that's the test. That's straight up the test, because Will Rogers seems like the quarterback you would want against Iowa's defense because he can throw deep, but he's also able to kind of find those guys in that 15 to 20 yard and let them eat for 40. I think that's kind of the perfect recipe to unlock Iowa's defense. And I'm curious to see if Jedd Fisch can accomplish. Because if he can accomplish that in year one, it's an underrated victory, almost in a way, kind of like, I don't want to say this, beating like a UCLA, or not a UCLA. It's kind of a bad example, but in the marquee of like, they're a tough out, it's a quality win in a tough environment, and it kind of checks the box for Jedd to say, hey, one of the toughest
beating Utah. I feel like that's what for a Pac-12 reference.
I don't know why I thought UCLA, because I was thinking I'm a Utah. That checks. It was a U school. I just picked the wrong one. But a perfect example, because nobody would ever truly give anybody credit for beating Utah, but they should. Like the overtime they did, and Utah has gotten the credit over the years, as we've seen. But they should have been getting that credit a long time ago. What kind of winning is that? And that's exactly what Iowa is. Kirk Ferentz, obviously a little bit different. Kirk and Kyle, a lot different in that regard. But yeah, unless Iowa's offense unless Kirk Ferentz is still there, Iowa's offense ain't putting up on 21.
I'm with you there, and so that's why I've got them at 6-1 heading into the bye. You've got them at 5-2 heading into the bye, where it's going to be fantastic for us. We get a much needed off week. This is our bye week preview. Yeah, we're going to be hanging out. We're going to, obviously still be here doing the show and everything, but we are going to be very much enjoying having a couple days off in just the grind that is the season. And then I was going to say we come back, but we don't, because Washington is going to Indiana after that. And this Indiana team is not bad. It's not necessarily, threatening upper echelon Big Ten, but it's a really, really solid team.
It's the Paisan Bowl. It was going to be the battle, the Kalen DeBoer, old versus new, until he left for Alabama. Vinny Cincinnati's brother is the quarterback's coach or offensive coordinator in Indiana. So I believe is certainly the quarterback coach. I don't know if he's the OC, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I know for a fact he's the quarterback coach. That I guarantee Vinny's not going to acknowledge the storyline. He's like, yeah, it's great to see my brother and all that, because we love Vinny, but very, very good at speaking to the media, not giving a ton away, which credit to him. And that's what coaches are supposed to do. Give just enough to where salivate us without exposing a ton. But that is another kind of matchup where that's one Washington should win. That to me is closer to the Northwestern ranks. I'm not saying Indiana's Northwestern, because to your point, they could
that's a solid squad. Yeah.
A solid squad. But Washington, especially coming out of the bye week, and this will kind of lead into why I had them losing the first two in October, is the run and who I actually have them picking in November.
Oh, well, that's a nice little teaser there. But let's talk a little bit more about this matchup, because the Rutgers one is one thing in terms of travel and all that sort of stuff, where I feel that fans have probably marked this one as a win, on their schedule, their calendar, whatever. I have as well. I think this is going to be a win for Washington, which puts them at 7-1, which, I feel is a lot to comprehend. And even as I say it, it sounds like a lot, but I think it's completely achievable. I really, really do. November is going to be a different story once we get there. But I look at this and I just think this is going to be a real Big Ten test. Not in terms of, the opponent, but in terms of what everyone, or what one of many holdups were about Washington joining the Big Ten, in terms of this sort of travel, where instead of, going to LA or having to go to Colorado or Utah or whatever, all of a sudden you have to go to Indiana. And fans are certainly going to be worried about that sort of travel and that sort of distance. And that's the number one thing that I'm going to be watching for in this game, is what does that look like? What is just how did Jedd Fisch and his coaching staff say, this is how we're going to deal with this? This is how we're going to adapt to the much longer road trips we need to take now.
I agree. And I think for that reason, he's going to pass the test. And having made that trip to Bloomington myself, I actually took a college tour there way back in the day. Bloomington, great town. Also, it comes out of nowhere when you make that drive. So it's a true Big Ten test. You're absolutely right. But it's a very winnable Big Ten test. It's a good one.
Great.
It's a validating one. It's not like you're going to Northwestern and it's like, okay, what are we doing here? It's a solid win, and it sets them up perfectly for the month of November.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest thing. And Lars, that month of November is quite scary, which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at Ultimate Football Head Coach. Hey, Locked On Huskies fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love just as much as I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Huskies? That'd be awesome. I'd love that. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you will control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Huskies fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your college coaching legacy today. Lars, yeah, November's rough. Let's just jump right into it here. There's no need to sugarcoat what it's going to look like when USC comes to town on November 2nd. That's where we're starting here.
So I have them at 6-2 going into the month of November.
Yep.
7-2.
Oh, okay.
That's so when I said the month of November was a surprise, that's the one. The realistic surprise.
I like that.
When I look at USC, yeah, Lincoln Riley, D'Anthony Lynn, good, solid hire. I don't mind that. But until Lincoln Riley proves it, I'm safe betting on Jedd in that, especially at home. If it's at USC, I think this is a different story. The teams aren't necessarily drastically different in terms of hear me out. By that time in the season, they're going to be a lot closer than I think people think, especially going into the season. And given that it's at home, that's kind of Jedd Fisch's marquee signature victory at home.
So I really like where you're going with there. I, at the moment, have this one marked down as a loss where I really like the moves that Lincoln made in the offseason, where it's always felt like the biggest thing for him getting over the hump was just getting Alex Grinch out of town. And it finally happened. And, you know, I of course I have to take a shot at the guy, but it finally happened. I really, really like the hire they made it in Lynn. I think I like it a little bit more than you do because it wasn't just the hire. It was the fact that they showed a renewed energy to actually get talent on the defensive side in the portal and then actually make it work within the scheme. Those two things just feel really unheard of from a Lincoln Riley coach team, especially after all his years in Oklahoma. But that, as of right now, until, you know, I'm not necessarily a big Miller Moss guy, but offensively, when I look at getting Woody Marks in there was a really nice move for them. And they still have Zachariah Branch, who's just that kid is so much fun to watch, but there's still some talent there that I can't overlook. And I think that Steve Belichick's defense is going to do a good job of containing those kinds of guys, you know, as we look at this in August. But the more that I look at this matchup, I think that one's really, really hard. It's a real toss up right now. And because I gave him the win at Iowa, I'm just going to say, all right, I can't give him both here.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I had that one as a loss, because one's at home, one's on the road. I think that's a fair split. At least, and by the way, both winnable games for Washington, both losable games. So I could see them beating Iowa and losing to USC just as you have it. But to me, the matchups is just the sense. I can't explain it. It's just the sense. To me that it does. I'm not saying it's what was that year that Stark beat USC at Husky Stadium?
2009.
2009. Thank you, because I know they beat him a couple of times. 2009, it was that first marquee signature victory at home for Steve Sarkisian.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's going to have the same level of gravitas because USC was highly ranked at that point, and I'm curious to see where USC will be ranked when they face him in November. That, I think, to me, is Jedd Fisch's marquee home victory.
Well, speaking of marquee games, after that, they travel to State College to take on Penn State in the whiteout. I think we're both going to end up being at that one. That's going to be a blast of a game. No matter what the outcome is, really, I'm just excited to take in just what is arguably the number one atmosphere in college football. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. The game on the field might be a little tough. That I've got another loss there.
Yeah, that one reminds me of that Oregon game down at Eugene. I know it's going to trigger warning mentioning Oregon, but I forgot what year it was, or maybe it might have been after that. But it was the game where you felt like going in, maybe they have a chance because it's a big time, game day, all this. and it was not close. And I'm not saying that Washington's going to get blown out or totally routed, but I do think there is still a gap between Penn State and Washington. And again, when you add in the atmosphere, and I will say, Washington's not running from this game. They asked for it.
Yeah,
they asked for it. So I'm glad they did, because even if they lose, go for it. It's your first season in the Big Ten. Ask for the whiteout. Get it. Make those moves. Plant that flag. Show that you're willing to take that fight. And I have a hunch that game's going to be so closer than people think. It's still going to be a loss. But I do think they're going to put up a fight in that game because of the atmosphere and everything. Washington could very much lose the game, but still gain an incredible amount of respect for how they play in the game, because I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
I like that. I certainly agree with you there. The Penn State offense is a really big question mark for me, where I know people have their feelings about him, but if Drew Aller actually can live up to his potential and take a step forward, I honestly believe that Penn State could play in the Big Ten championship game this season. But until we see that, they're like a half step down right now, in my opinion. But I do agree that it's going to be a lot closer than people think. And just, there's a lot of talent on that team. And I'm really scared about, if this offensive line is just middle of the road going into that game, what Abdul Carter might be able to do. I know I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, because that dude he just has first round pick written all over him. I love watching that kid play as well, as I know I've said about plenty of guys that we've gone through over the course of this show. Lars, then the second Friday night game of the year. It's a short turnaround, but at least it's at home when UCLA comes to town.
So this will probably be kind of not a spoiler, but I have this one as a win. I think UCLA.
What? No way.
I believe, well, actually, the game's at Husky Stadium, so we don't have to question where Deshaun Foster is going to be or where he's from. With that being said, I don't see any reason why. This is like Northwestern. This is the Pac-12 version of Northwestern, where you should handle this game. Just flat out, you should handle this game. No disrespect intended to UCLA, but unless Washington has significant injuries, this game shouldn't be close.
I agree with you there. The UCLA is just, they've lost too much. It's not a mess. I like Deshaun Foster. I think that he's going to be a fine head coach down there. But as of right now, you can't do anything but call it a win. And then we get another bye week for Thanksgiving. That's going to be great, and get a little time off, spend some time with the family. Shout out to my sister, who's starting her master's at UW this semester. So that's going to be fantastic. But then it's Oregon week. So just like last year, we get 2 weeks of buildup for Oregon week. We hear Oregon talking about their best team of all time, and this time it's in Eugene.
Yeah, and until I see it, I'm going to give Oregon the win. Washington, it's not the same roster. And I understand that Jedd is probably a better coach slightly than Kalen was, but that was magic, beating Oregon 3 times in 2 years. So I have a hunch that, especially Dylan Gabriel, I still think it's going to be a relatively close game of 10.7 points separating them. I don't think it's going to be a blowout for Oregon. But with the game in Eugene, I'm going to lean towards the Ducks here.
So I'm certainly with you. The one thing I will say about this game is, whatever the point spread is right now on FanDuel, take Washington, because I feel like I saw it at 19.5 last I looked, when I talked with our good buddy Spencer McLaughlin about it. So I will, right now, I can't say that I think Washington's going to win that game, but yeah, they will certainly cover that spread, in my opinion. Lars, take the Everydayers through your entire season prediction, just real quick. Which game, win or loss?
So go from the top 3. Weber State.
Just go 1 through 12. Just take them through them all.
Yeah, Weber State win, Eastern Michigan win, Washington State respectable win. Go to Northwestern or host Northwestern, win. Go at Rutgers, earn a tough victory there. You're 5-0 coming out of September. Get a little bit of humble pie against the defending national champion Michigan. You're 5-1. Learn a little bit about the Big Ten and Iowa City. Close loss there in week 2 in October. So now you're 5-2. Bye week. Come back from the bye week. Travel to Bloomington. Get a win at Indiana. Come home for Jedd Fisch's marquee home victory of the season against USC and Lincoln Riley. respectable loss to Penn State in the whiteout. Still think it's going to be a good game, no matter what the final score says. The West Coast Northwestern, UCLA win. And then for the time being, take Washington. But yeah, Oregon's going to win again. Take the points, but Washington's going to cover the spread, as you said. But I still can't pick against the Ducks right now.
So we both have Washington at 8-4. The only difference in our predictions right now is I've got a win at Iowa and a loss to USC. Where I like this. I think that this is really solid. It sticks to everything that we've seen throughout the offseason, where we've talked about it. We've said 8-4 feels attainable. I've seen, anywhere from 9-3. I know, shout out to Andy Yamashita, who said he's seen people at 10-2 to 4-8. There is a very wide range of outcomes for this team. I don't think they're going to hit either extreme. They're definitely going to be somewhere in the middle. They're going to win some tough games that some people think they won't. And I'm really excited for this season. I can't wait. Lars, we're 10 days away now as we record this on Wednesday, August 21st, and it's just going to be so much fun. And with that being said, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers tuning in, and thank you for making Locked On Huskies your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, our guy Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the season. We don't really need to say off season anymore because we are here. It is college football season. We're so excited. And with that being said, you got to make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new stuff every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Friday.